Today we are going to have a very special session with a very special person, Mr. John Bach, the first author to introduce the concept of sociocracy to English-speaking world. We will hear more about him from Swarna. John, countries, 12 15 states of India, Italy, Nigeria, Germany, US, Spain, and Sri Lanka. Friends, we welcome you to this session. Actually, the event is being organized by the Provisional Neighborocracy Parliament of India, people who are really interested in the governance from below, through the formation of parliaments with children, youth, women, and the adult in the communities. Today, we have John helping us to really understand the concept of the basic principles of sociocracy, the importance of consent-based decision-making, the difference between consent and consensus, to understand the aspect of sociocritic meetings and election process, and also the impacts and challenges while practicing the principles. And also the best example right now we have in front of us is the children of September, the UN summit of the future
Yeah, I think Ms. Jyoti is disconnected. I think due to some network issue. Yeah, okay, she's back. Jyoti ma'am, we lost you in between due to some network issue. We were not able to hear you properly. Yeah.
I was just saying that the inspiration we receive is from the children of the world through the community of the future. Did you get it? Hello? Hello? Pritam?
Yeah.
I'm
We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Yeah? Okay. I don't know where I lost the connection.
Yeah, that we are inspired by the children of the world.
Okay. Yeah, on the 22nd of this month, there was a summit of the future organized by the UN and the children of the world from different 6 continents of the world. They came up with the declaration and evolved the recommendations for the UN and for the future. The highlights, the world of unity, the world without war, a world with peace and justice, and leading to a safe world and well-governed world. I think this is one of the impacts of the children brought in through sociocratic processes. And let's enjoy the session with John today and celebrate sociocracy and the extension of democracy from my understanding. And once again, I welcome John and welcome the founder of Neighborocracy, Father Edwin John, and all the best, John, and all the best to all of us. Yeah, over to Preetham.
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti ma'am. Now I invite Swarna Lakshmi to introduce today's speaker, John Buck, to all of us. Swarna, over to you.
Hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, John Buck, an individual whose work has had a transformative impact on the world of governance. John's the first native English speaker to bring the Dutch system of sociocracy to the English-speaking world. He is a prolific writer and did not limit himself just to be the pioneer. He has 4 books to his name, including his upcoming release, Governance from Below, Can Children Lead the Way? His writing extends beyond books to numerous academic and peer-reviewed journal articles on sociocracy, such as Creating the Conditions for Reflective Team Practices, where he explores how sociocracy supports transformative learning. One of John's most significant contributions is his book, We the People, Consenting to a Deeper Democracy, which we are all aware of. It's a classic in the field of sociocracy governance. An interesting fact about this book, it was rated an astounding 12.3 on the Lectica measurement scale, which assesses scientific thinking and complexity. And Einstein's thinking stands at 14. This is an impressive achievement, and very few books. This is an impressive. Very few books. I could hear an echo. I don't know who turned. Yeah.
No, we can hear you, Swarna. Go ahead.
Great. This is an impressive achievement, as very few books scored higher than 11.3. And John has traveled extensively. And for example, between 2016 and 21, he has visited over 7 countries. He shared his expertise globally to many more countries. And he's the CEO of Governance Alive, and as well as a chairman of Governance from Below, a 501c3 charitable nonprofit organization. And he's also a TED speaker, having presented on sociocracy at the University of Maryland. John's passion for governance by children is truly inspiring. And thanks to his guidance, our children's parliaments began using sociocracy, helping children take a more active and effective role in decision-making. He continues to support the World Children's Parliament as one of its key adult allies and was one of its original founders. Kindly please join me, everyone, in welcoming John Buck, and thank you so much, Preetham, for giving me this opportunity to introduce John. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Swarna. John, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to be using some slides here, and let me actually go into screen share. And I just, in the chat, I just put the link to these slides so that if you have any trouble reading them, or you know, just want to go along with them as I talk, that's fine. And you're free to share these slides anywhere you want. I have in my mind, 3 different parts to the session today. The first part being basics of sociocracy. The second, and that'll be me mostly talking, but the second part, much more interactive, looking at common questions and challenges that people have, and we'll even can try an interactive quiz and maybe even a demo of consent decision making, because I've heard there's some questions about that. And then third part, just very much totally interactive. I have a joke here saying you can try questions to stump me if you want. That would be fun. But then closing comments. The way I'm presenting the first part, I haven't done before, and I continue to try to find ways to make clear what it is sociocracy is all about and really kind of why it's the other things you see on this slide are just sort of some organizations I'm affiliated with, like the World Children's Parliament, the International Sociocracy Certification Board. We have, I think more than 30 certified sociocracy consultants around the world right now, but none yet from India. Swarnalakshmi is a certified facilitator, but I would love to get people from India certified on that. We have meetings from all over the world get together and talk. It's a lot of fun. I have tried talking English with an Indian accent, only to have Swarnalakshmi go thumbs down, laughing at me. So I know that my accent may be sometimes difficult to understand, and I invite you to simply interrupt if I'm saying things that you don't understand, or I'm talking too fast like this, or whatever. So, because I'm aware that there's some bumps that can happen between the two dialects of English. The first exercise I would like to do, I can't do very well, although you might be able to lean in on your computer screen. It's about blind spots, and this is really an important part of the theme that I'll be talking about. If you want to open or use the slide, or what is it, the link down below, to try this, the instructions are to put your right hand over your right eye, and with your left eye, look at the plus. And as you kind of slowly go back and forth, maybe 35 centimeters away, depending upon how big your screen is, the dot on the left over here will disappear. And you will see just a whiteness where that it should have been. That's because your eye, where the neurons leave the back of your eye, is actually a blind spot. And your mind just fills it in. It says, oh, well, that must be a white piece of paper. We don't have data there. You can repeat this, and it's even more dramatic if you do right hand over right eye and look with your left eye at the orange dot. And you have to be patient with this, but if you get exactly the right spot, this blue line will appear to be continuous. Your mind will fill in the gap where it doesn't see, and you see a continuous line. And the point is that you need to know that you are continually, there are lots of gaps in what you see in the world, but your mind is very certain. I want to have a complete picture, even if I have to invent half of reality. And that's very relevant for some of the things we're about to get to. If I had pieces of paper to hand to each of you, we could spend some time right now, because it takes a little bit of patience to actually get that blind spot over there and get that experience. So you can use this, if you print it out at times when you're teaching people, and it's kind of fun to see that you don't see, and when you don't see, that you fill in things. I'm going to move on from this now, though, because I don't want to take time to try to see if everybody can do it. Just know that it's a fun thing to do. And move to the first screen. And this, again, is an example. We have throughout history, we have lots of discoveries of things that people should have been able to see, but they don't. They can't see it until somebody comes along and says, well, look, it's this way. And an example of that is the ability to draw or paint in perspective. And this picture here with all the blue lines is the first one. It was done in 1424. It was the first one ever done in perspective, because this guy, Filippo Brunelleschi, I think I'm pronouncing that more or less right, spent 5 years from 1415 to 1420 looking through little holes and doing mathematical calculations and figuring out how to draw in perspective. And he taught some other artists. This guy, Marcellino de Palanca, again, I don't pronounce Italian very well, was the first person that Filippo trained. And then finally, around 1435, Leon Alberti, whose picture is here, wrote this down. And at that point, then it was a Renaissance in Italy. Everybody started making paintings in perspective. So if you see a painting that looks flat, you know it was done before 1424. And if it was in perspective, you know it was done after that. I have a little side note here. Blind spots were discovered and documented. That's the blind spot is the exercise we just did in 1668. This physicist, Andime Mariotti, who was a Frenchman, figured out that we had a blind spot and that we fill in stuff there. So these insights go over time. We collect them. And when we get the insight, we can do more things than we could do before. And sociocracy is an insight like that. And I'm going to go into an explanation of what was discovered by Gerard Endenberg that's new, that lets us do new things. So again, the analogy is, oh, wow, when we did perspective, then we were able to see things differently. So they're actually behind sociocracy. There's not just the development of seeing in perspective. There are 4 important things that all happened in the late 70s or early 1980s that we're just now beginning to understand and being able to understand them. So the first one was something called both and thinking. There were some books that came out, particularly the book Getting to Yes by Bill Urey, U-R-Y, that was about mediation. And it was talking about when you have people with different ideas, you don't have them argue to settle their disagreement. You ask them both. How do you do both? And so this idea of both and thinking is literally no more than 40 years old, that having been introduced to humanity. And so we're just now beginning to be able to take advantage of it. So here's some things to look at, and it's characteristic of both and thinking. Over here on the left, you see a vase. Oh no, there are 2 faces. Oh no, it's a vase. And for me, it flips back and forth. I see faces and I see a vase. And some people say they can see both, but for me, it flips back and forth. It's more clear that things, when you're doing both and thinking, flip back and forth. Some of you, if you look at this cube, some of you will see the red face of the cube in the back. And then it may pop so that it looks at the front. If you can't, and maybe you see it at the front right now, if you tip your head a little bit, it will probably pop back. So, and the flips are generally, take a couple of seconds. First, it's in the back. Oh, and now it's in the front. And you see it in the front. Oh, there it flips to the back. That's how I experience it. So when you have both and thinking, you have contradictory or different ideas, the way you come to a solution or something everybody can live with is asking both. And you often will, the solution you come up with will flip back and forth. And this is the case with sociocracy. We're flipping back and forth between a horizontal organization and a vertical one. This thing of, is it a 6 or a 9, is classic. If you're the 2 people arguing about it, well, it's both. And it depends upon whether you're looking at it one side or the other as to what you see. So what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at both a 6 and a 9. I like this drawing over here. If we shine a light on 2 sides of a cylinder, and one person says, well, it's true, this is a square. The other person says, no, it's a circle. Well, how can it be true that we're seeing something that's both a circle and a square? Well, it's a cylinder. So which is both circular and a square, depending upon how you look at it. It's also a tube, it's round. So depending upon how you're seeing things, that's what you're dealing with. It is related to the blind spots. You may be certain you're seeing a square or certain you're seeing a circle, But if you can shift your thinking so that you say, oh, I didn't see that it could be that way, the blind spot is relevant here. So this new development of both and thinking is part that, and this takes a little bit of discussion as to what this means. That human-based feedback requires egalitarian structures. And this was one of the key discoveries that Gerard Endenberg made in the late 70s. I met Endenberg probably in the mid 80s, but he had said that, hey, oh, and by the way, if you look up here on this link, if you go to this HTTPS tinyurl.endenberg, I shrank the link down. This is a booklet that's about 35 pages long, and it's something that I co-wrote with Endenberg not long after I met him to try to get it in American English, and it remains as a pretty good explanation of sociocracy that's not too long, and you're free to distribute this anywhere. There's no, just go use it. As a smile, these triangles are called circles. In Dutch, that makes perfect sense. In English, it doesn't. So there's all kinds of challenges in translating some of the Dutch, surprisingly enough. And I'm told that by one person who knows it, that when he teaches sociocracy in Gujarati, it matches Dutch perfectly. So it's go figure that. But anyway, let's go and look at what does it mean that human-based feedback requires egalitarian structures. So when Gerard Endenberg took over his family's experiment with looking for better ways to run organizations that were more egalitarian, he took it over. He had been an electronics engineer for working for Philips Electronics. He, in fact, helped Philips get the patent on the flat speaker that's in your cell phone. And so he was very knowledgeable. The company that his parents had started as a family experiment is Endenberg Electrotechnique, or electrical technical would be another way of saying it. And they are in existence still today. They do heavy electrical engineering. If you have a dam or an air traffic control tower, you would come to them to get the electricity done. So when he took over the company, he said, all right, what's the structure of the company, the power structure? And he looked at this, here he was, there was a board of directors that they had, and there were managers and staff. This is the classic management structure. And he said, I'm an electrical engineer, I'm an electronics engineer. This is a power structure, but as an engineer, I would never design a power structure this way because it has no feedback loop built in. And that was the beginning insight of how he formulated sociocracy. He had experienced sociocracy in an earlier form when he was in school, and he's always very careful to say, I learned about this from Kees Boeke, and it was originally, the name sociocracy was invented back in the 1850s, and it took a long time for people to start understanding that there was another way to have democracy, another way to govern things. So he added the engineering approach to this. And I'm going to be talking about typical businesses, and then we'll switch to what does all this logic mean for organizing neighborhoods, and I'll do that in a few minutes. So he said, all right, this is no good because it has no feedback loop that you can't ignore in it. So I simplified the structure. Okay, we've got this top-down thing. The board is big and the staff is small and all this kind of thing are the connotations of this structure. So what are we talking about, this feedback loop? How does this work? And again, the theme is, that we need people to be egalitarian to have a feedback loop. So what does this mean? All right, let's look at feedback loops. Let's just focus down here on what does this mean. But I want to look at other types of feedback loops because buried in here is a discovery that we have to understand Why sociocracy? So over here on the right-hand side is a feedback loop. If you have a furnace in your house, this is India, so a lot of people may not have furnaces, but you may have air conditioners. In any case, if you turn on your air conditioner, then or your furnace, it starts working, and so this orders the furnace start sending out hot air. I'm going to use a furnace example here, or it could be cool air if it was an air conditioner. But this on-off switch is the boss. It says turn on, so the furnace starts generating a lot of hot air. And there's a third function. It's a thermostat, and the thermostat measures the temperature of the air and says it's getting too warm. This was supposed to be our policy was 25 degrees, and it's now warmer than that. So it sends that information to the on-off switch, and the on-off switch has to listen to that thermostat. Oh, all right, we'll turn it off. Stop, and it orders the furnace stop working. And the thermostat is saying, oh, the temperature is getting too low. Switch, turn on. So the switch says, all right, furnace, turn on. And these three components of this steering system, the next thing in the line has to listen to what's happening. So that's a feedback loop for a steering system. Let's look at another steering system. We have a driver in a car. So the driver says to the car, go to the right, or go faster, or whatever. And the car obeys. Hey, the car says, all right, I'll do that. I'll go faster, I'll stop, whatever you tell me to do. The car sends some information over here. It's gauges. I'm running low on electricity or gasoline, or the engine is overheating, or whatever. Whoops. And there's another feedback going here, and that's part of this driver. The driver has some body senses. The driver has eyes that can see. The driver has ears that can hear horns. So there's two kinds of thermostats here. There's the gauges from the car, reports from the car. Oh, he's hopping the way. And there's also the driver's senses. So the driver is up here with feet and hands, telling ordering the car what to do, but the driver also has senses that are saying, all right, this is happening, and I need to pay attention to it. If the driver sees that they're about to hit a stone wall, they have to take action immediately, or you have a big crash and the system comes down. So there is this function of information that must be listened to. If you're running out of fuel, you have to listen to that, or the whole thing stops. So that function works, and you can steer a car well because all these things are operating. Although the thermostat, the feedback part, is more complex. Now we get down here to this diagram. The manager is lead. The lead. The manager is saying, staff, do this. And the staff send information over here. And the manager, like this case, is also in the measuring. So what's happening here? Who's really doing the measuring? How does that work? And that's the question Endenburg started looking at. If we are going to put a feedback loop into this top-down structure, how do we get that measuring thing to really work? Why isn't the drawing there of the feedback that has to be given? So let's look at some more at that. Again, we're looking at human-based feedback requires egalitarian structures. So the lesson that Endenburg saw is that we have this top-down structure and the staff does things, but we've not really defined how this measurement system works. The manager, like in the car, is still involved in it, but the manager has blind spots. The manager will invent reality. Has anybody ever worked for a boss that was inventing reality? Yes, I'm sure. I certainly have. And so the manager can get feedback from the staff. Oh, here's a survey, or talking with people, what do you think? But in the traditional structure, the manager is the one that gives him or herself feedback. They say, okay, I hear the staff, but this is the feedback. We're actually doing okay. And the staff is saying, you got to be kidding. We're not doing okay. But the manager cannot see that, can ignore, and doesn't have to listen to that part of the measurement. So we get back here, human-based feedback, which is what this is. The staff may be giving data about how they're doing, but they also have opinions. Human-based feedback requires egalitarian structures. So this structure right here, this feedback structure, has to be egalitarian so that if the manager has a blind spot, then the manager is forced to listen to it. That the output of this measurement is everybody's vision of what they're seeing. And so that means that wherever you have a manager and a staff, this is really only one line. It's this structure right here. So we have to, this triangle is actually a circle in English. You can call it the equivalent of a ring in Dutch, but we draw a circle here. We like to draw triangles. If you look at that book, you'll see this circle here is actually drawn as a triangle, and that's okay in Dutch. So it's a circle in English, and that means that you're indicating that in this downward structure, you actually have a feedback loop. So you show that by the circle. So this circle structure with staff, it's intended to be the same way, only there's many staff here that the manager is leading. And so that adding of a circle, of a feedback loop to this downward structure is the basis of sociocracy. And Endenburg then said, okay, if that's happening, how do we have a way of making a decision that the manager is involved in, but the manager can't dictate what the opinion of the thermostat is, of the measurement? How does that work? And the answer is that the circle makes decisions by consent. He said, we can't have majority vote. We can't have people trying to reach agreement because that takes forever. That's consensus. We've got to have something that's fluid and fast and that everybody can live with. Good enough for now, safe enough to try, that where we're looking at body reactions, not just logic. There's this way of making decisions that has to work for this thermostat because it has to be quick, has to be efficient, and it has to involve everybody. So that's why human-based feedback requires egalitarian structures. It has this thermostat function, this measurement function has to be done egalitarian. Everybody's voice has to be there and not ignored if you're going to have an efficient thermostat. And you can say that one reason a lot of businesses have trouble is that they don't have a really good feedback mechanism. This is a blind spot. People didn't see it. It's an insight, like being able to draw in perspective. It's something new that we hadn't seen that lets us work better. And so let's get into consent decision making a little bit more. First of all, you need to put these circles. The whole structure needs to have what he called double linking. Everybody has to be there. You can, in fact, this gets into the neighborhood thing. You can, and rather than having these circles, you can actually have everybody get together. And some businesses I work with will do that. They'll have a staff of 80 people get together and decide, how are we going to be paying people next year? What's our payment system? You can really literally do that because the feedback is we need to do a better job of dividing up our profits. So you can make all kinds of decisions that can be one great big circle, but it's generally more efficient to break it down into each unit where there's a downward link, a command and control kind of link, which is what this is. And so you need the whole circle structure. That means that we're doing back and forth. We operate day to day with these boxes, but then we flip and we become egalitarian. And that's both and thinking. We have to have both a downward structure and a completely flat structure. And we do that by flipping back and forth. That's the both and thinking that was needed to be in place for Endenburg to really make this successful. Many of you may have seen this diagram before. This circle right here is linked to this red circle, which is often called the general circle, by two people. In other words, the manager and then somebody other than the manager, elected by the staff and the manager, is also a member of this circle up here. So that and this is each case, you have two people from here. So the red circle consists of 2, 4, 6, and the CEO, 7 people. Then all these people, whether it's a manager or a staff, elect one or could be more people to the board of directors. And the board of directors is linked to the outside world. The people who are on the board should be people who know about things that are over the horizon for everybody else. Financial experts, what's happening in the society, what's happening in technology. They're all very important views to have on the board so that this structure is not isolated and is connected to the outside. So that this structure then, again, is completely egalitarian. And you may have heard this story that I've told, and maybe not. I'm going to tell it again. When Endenburg put this structure into Endenburg Electrotechnique, this experimental company that he was now the head of, they went on fairly successfully. Okay, this is another way of drawing it. You can draw just the circle structure. In fact, I'll leave it this way because it may be more clear. It went on for 3 or 4 years and things seemed to be working okay, but he didn't really have any proof that it could do things that he done just otherwise, until the company ran into a financial crisis. They had a quarter of their business that was doing people on board ships doing heavy electrical wiring, big ships, big electrical cabinets and so forth. And at that point in time, the Japanese shipping industry had figured out how to build ships much less expensively than the Dutch. And so some of the Dutch, the companies where the company was working went out of business suddenly. And so suddenly they had a quarter of their staff, electrical engineers, experienced electrical engineers, that had no job. They couldn't pay them from income that they were making. And so in Holland, in order to have a layoff, which is American for, I don't know what the British term is, but it means that you don't have people working for you. You're not firing them, but you tell them that you can't leave. I think they call it redundancy in British English, and I don't know what you call it in Indian. But anyway, in order to have this layoff, which is the American term, they had to have the board of directors come together and say, all right, we're doing that. That's Dutch law. So this was scheduled for 2 or 3 days, an emergency meeting. In the meanwhile, if you imagine that this is a part of the company that constructs electrical cabinets, and imagine that this is the part of the company whose business was building ships. One of the technicians, a machinist over here in this circle, and it might be clearer to imagine it here, maybe this staff member here, said to himself, why are we going to do a layoff? We have an emergency fund in the company. This seems like an emergency. Let's bring in the people who had been on board the ships, put coats and ties on them, give them a little bit of sales training, and then they can go out and talk. They know the technology. They can find more work for us, and they'll do it quickly because they're just down to earth people and they can sell. And so he said, all right, I'm going to call a circle meeting, and I'll shift over here. Here we go. I want to have a circle meeting, and he called an emergency circle meeting to share his idea. This circle said, oh, wow, okay, whoops, that's nice. Why don't you, we like your idea, why don't you be another representative here? We'll have a third a second representative. So there's now three hash marks here, and you're now part of the general circle. So this guy said, oh, great. And he calls an emergency meeting of the general circle. And the general circle, consisted of the CEO and other managers. And they were like, what? What's happening? And it was like the next morning after these people had a meeting and before the board of directors meeting. And so he explained his idea, and the people in the general circle said, oh, we hadn't thought of that. Yeah, we like it. There's a few changes in what we think. Why don't we elect you as another representative to the board of directors, the top circle, and you go sit on that meeting that's happening tomorrow. So there's now another red line here. This meeting was apparently very interesting. Some of these people here were very stiff, proper Dutchmen who, in business suits, who saw this guy coming in his work clothes, overalls. And a couple of them apparently left, said, we're not sitting in the same meeting with somebody like that. The other ones stayed, and they listened, and they made a few adjustments, and they said, all right, we do it. And the result is that they had no layoff. The guys were able to come in, and within a couple of weeks had managed to bring in a lot of small jobs, and the company became stronger because it was more diversified in its customer base. So at that point, Annenberg said, okay, I have some proof that this system makes people listen better. The leadership can come from anywhere within this structure. And so that was proof, that the first proof that you can actually do better, you can steer better if you have this circle structure giving the feedback. Now I want to extend this thought to neighborhoods. If we go into a neighborhood, there's if you can call a structure, something that's random, a structure. There's just a bunch of people all over. Here's some people that doesn't talk with other people over here. Here's these two people, or these are two families, and they talk to each other and so forth. But there's no structure of being able to talk with each other and do anything. So this is how it's operating. This is the quote unquote operational structure. Not much is happening. There's no guidance is being given to anybody, but you can still call a circle meeting. We can have a measurement to the neighborhood. Is like, hey, what are we doing? Couldn't we do this better? The feedback is this: we're not talking with each other. It's particularly bad in the U.S. I'll tell you. You can have a neighborhood and people can live a house or two from each other for years and not even know each other's name. This picture is the picture of American neighborhoods. And so organizing, getting people together like this is like a really big deal. I have a little note up here. You all are calling it neighborhood parliament. There's English is a mess. It has all these, this history to it. And originally, it was what's called Anglo-Saxon. And the parliament, before the French took over England, the parliament was called the Wittenagemot, where you can see the word wit, and the moot is like moot, M-O-O-T. If you translate, if you still use that same thing, you would call the neighborhood parliament the neighborhood wise talking, which when you say it in Anglo-Saxon, to me, it means a lot more. So the neighborhood parliament is a neighborhood wise talking. Let's get together. Let's have a structured measurement of the neighborhood. What's happening? What can we do better? And out of that may, hold on to your hats, come this structure that where have we seen this before? If this is a group, a committee that's, a committee that's going out and buying some kinds of common food like flour for the whole neighborhood to get a cheaper price, that would be this. It needs to be somebody that's out, doing the doing, going out and actually doing the buying. They may have a circle meeting and say, hey, you take this role and you kind of check on us, so that there's some kind of leadership structure, a command structure. And this could be taking care of the children after school. Can we organize this? Okay, we'll have two houses do this, and maybe you're this person and this person, but whatever, but there's a structure. So suddenly this can start a structure like this. Where have we seen this? You need this top-down structure. I turn it on its side so it doesn't seem so formidable. And we didn't have to do big boxes and all that. And interestingly enough, there can in a neighborhood be a quote unquote board of directors. In other words, you can bring in outside people, maybe somebody from another neighborhood or somebody who knows about childcare or whatever, somebody who knows about how you do bulk buying that could be there to give overall guidance that could also help these people. So you actually, a neighborhood can get people in to help it. Maybe they meet twice a year or something. This is actually a very important function to think about when you're organizing a neighborhood, or maybe it's a second or third level of federation. This body of people who are, again, you have a circle here and a couple of people from here meet with them. So decisions are made by everybody's voice. So this is something to think about when you're operating, trying to set up a bottom-up system of governance. Another thought here is that the fourth thing that we talked about is transformative learning. There is a particular client I have. Here is their up here their website. This is the International Transformative Learning Association. I taught them a few years ago. Because this fits with what they're doing, they have a long description of sociocracy in their website. They even go into the circles, the links, consent. We haven't talked about elections today, elections by consent, which is the fourth principle Endenburg came up with. So transformative learning happens when you have a framework of how you're looking at things, and suddenly you see something and your framework shifts. That doesn't happen as often as learning like, okay, this is how we do 2 + 2, but it's a new kind of learning. And again, it emerged in the late 1970s by somebody named Jack Mesereau. And so this fits bang in with them. And transformative learning is what happens when you have a really good circle meeting. The boss, among other things, may see things differently. So sociocracy is a structure that induces transformative learning. The example of the person who had been in the engineer who had the idea of not having a layoff, that was a transformative learning moment. It's like, oh, we didn't even see that. So now they have a new framework to make decisions. The ITLA's definition of sociocracy is a system of governance that seeks to achieve solutions that create harmonious social environments as well as productive organizations. They explored sociocracy as a governance model, tried some circles. They have a circle structure over here, initiated 3 circles, the mission circle, leadership circle, and the conference circle. And over time, it's evolved into this. So that's typical of when I bring in sociocracy to an organization. They experiment a little bit and they get into it a little bit more. And then they, like this organization, says, all right, this is how we work. Note that they say over time, circles have formed and dissolved in response to evolving aims and needs. And that's an important thing about any organization using sociocracy, is it's fluid, it changes. So those are the 4 new developments that have happened that makes this discovery of Endenburg's, like the human feedback requires egalitarian structures. All these are necessary ideas that make sociocracy works. They're all boom, boom, boom insights that all need to work together. And actually, there's a 5th one. The Endenburg and Father Edwin came up with the idea of federating upwards at the same time. Edwin Edinburgh had more trouble with that, tried a few experiments, couldn't make them work because of the political opposition. Edwin has done a much better, more effective job. And Edwin came up with these 5 principles that Edinburgh did not. So the two of them fused together. You may or may not know that there's a whole project that started with the Sociocracy Center in Austria, where they got a whole bunch of money to replicate what's happening in India. And that's all these principles now they've studied, they're including them. So there's a flow back and forth, sharing of sociocracy or neighborocracy, whatever you want to call it, or whatever's the best thing to do. So the 5th new development is the governance from below. I have the 1940s to 1980s listed here because I credit Gandhi with the original insight that we have to have governance from below. I've been over there in Ahmedabad, seen his ashram there, and a very moving experience for me. And it's taken this long for Edinburgh and Edwin to build on that and come up with something that's really doable. And of course, I love this picture of the children here who are really operating at a second level in the upward federation. So that's the 5th new development that is involved in sociocracy. That's it. I was planning to take a half an hour with this. I see I've run, I think we started at 1:15. I've run a bit over, but I do want to shift now to, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment on some of these things, and then I'll come back again, because I'd like to be able to see the chat box. In fact, or maybe I can see it. Let's see here. We have some stuff coming. The no let's see. No questions at this point. So what I'd like to do at this point is ask you. I'm shifting now from what's the basics of sociocracy to some hints at running things. You know, you all have had some experience now, and maybe we can have some discussion a little bit about, well, what are you running into? What does everybody know? What are some other concepts now that you have some experience with it that might be helpful in terms of continuing to develop how you're doing sociocracy, kind of like the International Transformative Learning Association said, you know, we had to take some time and work with this. And I actually intervened with them a few times, or they called me in. So kind of in a way, I'd like to be able to just see if there's anything else I can make suggestions about. So I'd like to do that by being much more interactive and do a quiz. And the first quiz is, what are the 4 key roles in a circle meeting? And so please enter what you think they are. Maybe you can put in one role, like, oh, a facilitator. There's you get the first of the 4 things that we're looking for, a facilitator. What are the other roles? And you may be a little bit reluctant to be wrong, but that's fine. Please just put in addition to facilitator, okay, somebody says a note taker, good. What about other roles? What are the other roles, the special roles of people in the meeting? You have a circle meeting, the leader, the manager, good. What's the 4th role? Anybody thinking? Okay, good. We have no immediate answers on that right now. The 4th role, you remember that we have in this circle here up to here, we have one of these lines is the operations leader, the manager. What's this other line? That's your hint on this answer. We have the operations leader. What's this person right here? Double link, right? The person that we could call it a double link or the elected representative. And let me go back here just a little bit to look at this diagram again. The double link is the person who is also carries the voice of everyone in the circle to this meeting, so that it's not just the manager saying to the boss up here, well, this is how things are going on. This person right here can also say how things are, what's happening. And then there's another piece of that, which is very important, which is if you have this general circle meeting, or if it's in a federated neighborhood, you have, a neighborhood, a village, a district, or a panchayat, whatever, however the structure is going. The person who's up in these more abstract meetings needs, whenever you have a circle meeting, to say, this is the decisions were made. They're having this blue circle meeting. The red circle just made these decisions. And this one is probably controversial, but I consented to it because. And that is really important because it helps people say, when they are saying, why is management doing that? They have somebody to go to who's not the management to say, why did that happen? And it brings everybody together. It helps everybody be committed to the organization. It's a very important role. A quick story on this. When I one time had a company that was making springs and equipment, a third level supplier for car companies. And they had just had a strike, and I got them to try out this structure. And there was somebody elected, again from a machine shop, who was in the general circle, and the general circle elected him to the board of directors. He sat in on the board of directors meeting. I was there, and the board was saying, should we try to market more or not? We were so busy that we were afraid to market and get more business in. And this person right here said, guys, I want to tell you something. We are pretending to be busy because we're afraid for our jobs. Bring in more business. We don't have enough business. We have much more capacity. And all these people and this person here were going, oh my goodness, really? Suddenly the truth came out. And that's a very important role for this person. So that's why that link is very important. It's the source of truth. So those are the 4 roles. And so the and if I'm just realizing that if I tried to fill in these answers right here, then I would not be able to be in screen sharing mode. It won't let me fill in things. So you can fill in the answers here, the facilitator, note taker, the operations leader, and the elected representative. If we look at note taker, there's a question I have. I have heard that often when you have PNP meetings, notes are not taken, and maybe there's not an agenda set beforehand. This note taker may not be putting out a note saying, what agenda items do you want to have on the meeting? They may not have checked with people who are bringing up something to say, where's your information? We need to send it out to people beforehand. There may not be a way to get to the notes meetings. And there's a concept underlying that. When you have a bunch of people together who are in an egalitarian way, they need to have a common memory. It's almost like they need to have a common group brain. And the caretaker of that brain is the note taker. So it's not just taking notes. You are creating an organic, the organic brain for everybody. I love looking at octopuses because the octopus actually has independent brains in each leg, and then there's a group brain, the central brain. So this is the octopus keeper here for the note taker. So that's an example of why each one is important. And I'm noticing time, but that's just kind of a note. I'll be asking again for a little bit of discussion about that, or a chance to ask questions in a moment. But here's another quiz item. Why in the format of a circle meeting, one of the things Endenberg said was you need to start with an opening round. An opening round is when everybody just brings themselves in. It can be any question, from how are you doing to did you see an animal today, or what's your favorite flower, whatever, anything like that, but bringing you in. And why is that important? Raviji said it sets the mood for the meeting. Okay. Other reasons. I'm looking for a really fundamentally important reason. Anybody out that is correct, Raviji, and there are other reasons. Anybody have any ideas? Helps us connect on a human level, very important. Thank you, Ian. I'm looking for more. That's not the fundamentally important reason I'm looking for. They're like, yeah, I like those, they're true. And there's something even more important. Elicits participation of all, good. One more, okay, gives importance to each human. That's getting closer to what this is that I'm looking for, but it doesn't hit the power aspect. And so when we're back here, way back here, looking at this operation, we've said this has to be both the manager and the staff, and they have to make decisions together, and they give direction here. They'll say, manager, you need to follow these policies. Manager's consenting to that, which is important, and the manager's helping do the measurement. But this is the opinion that gives, it has power, and it gives direction to that manager. And what Endenberg said is the reason that a opening round is important is that it's a power ceremony. And a power ceremony is whenever he said, power likes to dress itself up. And so if you have real power, you have to dress it up. For example, you have the mayor of the city or the leader of the cities coming into a gathering of the city, and there's a band there. Here comes the mayor. Or if you go into court, the judge is there, probably with a robe. And in India, I think they wear a wig. And somebody, a clerk says, all rise. In the US, all rise. Everybody has to stand up. It's a little power ceremony. And there is real power in that judge. The judge, and the power likes to have a ceremony. It likes to dress itself up. So the opening round is a power ceremony. It says, we are in charge. We are the boss. And that's the power ceremony. And that's why it's so critically important that you honor that power. It's real power. It is going to give an order to the boss. And so you have to recognize that power. We, the people, are in charge. People includes the boss, but everybody is in charge. So it's an important aspect of power. Okay, I sort of already answered question 4, why it's important for people to prepare for meetings and take notes. If you're part of a group that is not doing that, why might this not be happening? Anybody have any analysis of this? Just, I'm looking for 1 or 2 comments. Why might you not be doing this? Why might the person, if you're taking notes, not be doing it, not preparing for meetings, not be doing it? Any insights? Yeah, that's what it should be doing, Raviji. Why might it not be happening is my question. Asking people to reflect a little bit. Because I want to pay more attention to what people say. Very good. That everybody wants to be involved in it. What's the solution for that? I find often that there are some people better if they're taking notes, and it's very important that you're not trying to take everything everybody said, but more trying to assist the process of the meeting. If you're online, people can be watching that, and multiple people can be adding their notes. If you're live, if you have some kind of flip chart or there's a piece of paper people can be taking notes at, you actually are assisting the facilitator when you're trying to make a decision. You're actually trying to write it out. So if and there should be active participation by that note taker. The note taker may want to stop the meeting and say, is this what we heard? They should be included in the round, just like the facilitator, when you're doing a round, needs to say, okay, now it's to me. They take off the facilitator hat and they put on their participant hat to say something. The facilitator needs to be sure that the person taking notes is there, and, has a chance to take their note-taking hat off and actually say something. So electing somebody who can do that multitasking is very important. Some people are able to do it more easily than other people. Excuse me. Rijay said to listen to everybody's consent. Yeah, that actually, the judging that consent has been given is something that is important for the facilitator to do, because they should be looking at everybody's body language and so on. You're looking for good enough for now. Okay, I can live with this. And that's often expressed by your body. And that should be something that the facilitator is making a judgment about. Coming up with the wording of a decision should be something that the note taker or the circle administrator can either take the initiative in or work closely with the facilitator. They can work as a team there. Hopefully I've addressed that. We've got questions in a moment. We can talk more about that if you want. Why don't we hold number 5, and as we get into questions, we don't have time to practice the consent decision-making. The point I was going to be trying to make with the consent decision-making is that there are 2 forms of decision-making. And by the way, please click on this learning aid down here. If you haven't seen it, it's, and we don't have time to get into it, and I can come back and talk more about it if you want. I'm happy to do that. But it gives a very detailed chart of the different decision-making processes. One is you first think together what's the problem, and then you collect proposals, and then you go ahead and consent to it. More commonly, somebody will be on the agenda that says, hey, we need to be having a Friday get-together in the neighborhood. Every Friday meets in a certain place, and we have a party. So they can come in on the agenda, and that's on the agenda, and they can write out, this is my proposal, and it can be fairly detailed. When you do the round for reactions on this evening, you should maybe do a round for questions for clarification. And when you do reactions, people will say, why Friday at 5 p.m. Friday at 7 p.m. would work better. The note taker can then just change that. If you have it written up on a flip chart or a chalkboard, you can just change it. It said 5 p.m., change it to 7 p.m. You go around, somebody else says, well, I think 6:30 would work better. So you cross that out, put down 6:30. And as each person says something, you change what the proposal says, so that when you get around, it's there. And if that's not what people want, they can object to it. but you collect the thoughts as you're going. You don't argue about it, is it this or that? That's the both and thinking. Somebody said 7 o'clock, somebody said 6, whatever the latest one was, put it down. Somebody will say, well, as I think about it, we can have the children come in a bit earlier and the adults can come later. And some of the older adults might want to linger into the evening when the children go to sleep. So now you have 2 or 3 starting times. And and so, okay, and Raviji, we'll get to that in a moment about that. But the point I'm trying to make is this consent decision making should be using both and thinking, and that means just changing it as you go until you come up with something. We're really starting to get into questions now, and so let's bleed over into that. Raviji, you're concerned about when concerned persons are not present or able to participate. Generally, the facilitator needs to make a judgment. If 2 or 3 people are not there, and the facilitator says, okay, we're going to send the minutes of the meeting out by tomorrow to everybody. So our general policy is that if this is a decision and you weren't there, if you have an objection to it, you have to say within 24 hours of when we sent the decision out, or and if you have an objection, then call up the facilitator or the note taker, and we'll try to resolve it for you. And if it can't be resolved, then we'll either have an emergency meeting to try to resolve it, or we'll put it in the next meeting. So that's typically a good policy that lets you move forward. And if somebody's not there and they're out on vacation, you don't have to wait to make the decision. The facilitator may say, oh, yeah, the person who's out is heavily affected by this. We do need to have the circle administrator, the note taker, call this person up and make sure it's okay, explain the decision to them. And if it seems to be okay, or there's a minor change needed, then send a note out to everybody and say it's going to be this way. So there can be an after meeting process that varies depending upon what the needs of the group are, and the judgment about how to go about dealing with the fact that somebody's not there needs to generally lie with the facilitator. So it's a complex answer, but it's good to have talked it through and to have a standard policy so that everybody knows, hey, I need to react within 24 hours if something doesn't make any sense, or I have a piece of information that would make this a really bad thing to do. And and then you have situations where you've got to make a decision right now and somebody's not there, then the person who's got to act right now can try to get hold of them. And if not, they just go ahead. There's all kinds of judgment to make about that. It's one of the practical things. So we've got a little bit of time. Let's have it be open for question and answer now. And Preetam, do you want to go ahead and sort of lead that?
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, so I think people can now unmute themselves and can ask questions to John directly, or you can also put in your questions in the chat box and it will be taken up one by one.
Great. I'll answer Raviji's question first. Again, if you look on the learning aid there, I'm not going to try to bring it up because I'm afraid of, like, I can't show it or whatever. But if you open that up, this link right here, you can just type it in this way, PNP summary. You'll see a chart, and in that chart, you'll see I think it's the orange column that recommends in a circle meeting, you should always, in the very first part of the meeting, accept the agenda. So if the facilitator says, okay, here's the agenda, we won't be able to get to George's item because we've run out of time, and we put it toward the end of the meeting, we'll try to get to it if there's time. And we also won't get to the other item. So that's why we put it fairly low down in the order in the agenda. And then the facilitator can ask informally, does anybody have any objection to the agenda as proposed? At that point, the person it looks like their item is not going to be addressed can say, I object. This issue really needs to be addressed right now because, and now we have a consent decision to make. There's, how do we do the both and thing? We have this urgent thing and we have this other urgent thing. Maybe we create a special team to go look at it. Yes.
Yeah, I see Ian. Ian has raised his hand. Ian, over to you.
Just a second. Raviji, did that answer the question?
Sorry.
Raviji, did I answer your question? Okay, yes, okay. Ian and then Swarna.
Hey, John.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, thank you so much for the presentation. I've really enjoyed it. Learned a lot. Like, I've seen it in similar ways before from you, but each time I learned a little bit different, a little bit that I didn't know before. And so one of those things was this question about the opening round and why it's so important. And you talked about it kind of being a chance. It's like it gives an order to the boss, I think is what the words that you used, like that opening round. It's kind of a power ceremony. And so I was wondering what that order it gives to the boss. And if we'll say that the boss for the particular meeting is the facilitator, I was wondering, like, is that order like basically the feedback? So I'm thinking about like the check-in round, if that's what your opening round is. You're asking everybody how they're doing.
Right.
Does that give the feedback, like, now you have to respond if everybody's
No. What I'm saying is that the whole meeting, the decisions in the meeting are directioned to maybe various members of the meeting, but it also includes direction to the boss. And for example, it might be that somebody says, the coordinating before we go out and dig in the garden. This is a group that does some local farming. Before we dig in the garden, before you tell us, boss, to dig over there, you need to coordinate with Susie because she's an expert in how to dig in the garden, how you do it effectively. She's and so our policy needs to be that you have to coordinate with her before you tell us to dig in the garden, and work her opinions into the way you order us to do that. So that order, that policy now becomes direction to the boss. It sets the overall policy. And so the meeting itself, the output of the meeting can be directions to the boss. So the power ceremony, it's just like when you start with the judge is going to make some decisions. Everybody stand up and, and honor the judge is the power ceremony, and the power, it gets expressed later in the process. So the meeting gives feedback and direction, policy to the boss that the boss needs to follow. And ideally, one typical thing is that the boss puts this proposed decision on the agenda that says, we had to come up last week and I had to handle it. And our policy is that if something needs to be done, we don't have a policy, I just do it. And this is why I did it. But I want some policy that helps me the next time I run into that.
right.
And so everybody comes up with something, and now the boss has that direction. So that's an example of everybody's opinion together, giving feedback to the boss. No, do it this way next time. Is that clear, Ian?
I mean, I definitely get that in general in meetings, but I'm wondering how that relates to the opening round, like a check-in round or something.
All right. When you have a gathering, like I'm going to continue to use the example of the court. You have a gathering of people, and they're going to make a decision, and they're going to make a decision that holds, that has power. There is power here. And you signal that to everybody by having this power ceremony. All rise. Judge wears a robe. In the circle meeting, everybody checking in says everybody is in charge to make the decisions we're
Right.
about to make.
Not just
Does that
the
make
one
sense?
person talking. It's taking the time for everybody to be an equal participant in that opening round, and that kind of sets the tone. Is that right?
Yeah. Everybody has a voice that's honored.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And it can be done very rapidly.
Yep.
You've got, 50 people for some reason, they just put it into the chat on Zoom, or they just, they get together and have an opening round, and then that gets reported. There's all kinds of ways to not make it take too much time.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Swarna.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, John. It was such a wonderful presentation, which covered a lot of different aspects, and I did learn a lot as well, like this time. And I really reflect whatever Ian said. So just to be precise with my question, how does sociocracy address cultural sensitivity? For example, let me just take a quick example of the WCP meetings we've had. In one of the meetings, especially while we were trying to have recommendations, it was the child and the mother together participating, and the child and the mother, she's a 10-year-old, and you were also there, but I think before you came to that particular meeting in the World Children's Parliament, the child was trying to read the recommendations and trying to consent to it. And the child said, yes, everything was okay. I really could not figure out, or as a facilitator, I could not hear any objection to it. The child did consent. At some point, there was some intuition that told me that, no, I need to reconsult that child. How did that child how the child could have understood recommendation? And then I figured out the problem that the mother, only from the mother's words that I was easily able to understand that the languaging was pretty difficult and it was not child friendly, and I had to change the languaging, which was a great input, which wouldn't have come out if I had not asked that question. So I wonder how sociocracy in this place could be used, or how sociocracy addresses this cultural sensitivity.
I think you sort of answered the question, is that you as a facilitator were able to adapt how it was operating in order to meet that particular context of a mother kind of sort of dominating the child. And you were able to you saw the problem, and as facilitator, you were able to work that out. So the question is, how adaptable is sociocracy? The more experience you get, the more able you are to do it. You're a certified facilitator right now. You've had a lot of training in that. And the facilitators, if you have like PNP has a lot of people who are facilitating, you can get those facilitators together, a special facilitator meeting, to just talk about that kind of thing, to build their skills. You can actually get the note takers / circle administrators together to talk about how they're doing things, and how can we coordinate our records together. Like maybe we have several circles, let's keep our records in one place, and so on. So does that answer your question well enough? It's related to Alice's question that I want to kind of get over to more, but did I answer that well enough, Swarna?
Yes, thank you very much.
So Alice, you're asking, how adaptable is sociocracy to different cultural contexts? We have sociocracy now on every continent, and it seems to, in terms of social context, seems to work very well. I like the story one person told about teaching sociocracy. He was from Canada, and he was in northern Canada teaching sociocracy to an indigenous tribe. And as he was starting to teach, he noticed that they looked like they were getting very angry. And he said, "Why are you so angry?" And they said, "You're stealing this from us." So there's something very intuitive about the sociocratic structure, the idea that everybody has a voice. The toughest environment that I've dealt with is the big corporate environment that tends to be dominated by alpha males, because the alpha males have lots of blind spots. they blow hot air and there's no thermostat to tell them that it's too hot. You're blowing hot air in here. They don't know how to do transformative learning. Like, oh, I'm playing alpha male. It might be nice if we played alpha everybody. And so that's an area I'm focusing on right now. And I would appreciate any feedback now or afterwards about, did this new way of explaining, was it clear? Because I'm trying to find how to get through to the alpha males. I had an example of a bank where there was a mid-level manager who had brought me in, and I worked with her, and I said, okay, now we're going to have the first experiment be with this particular department. I said, you need to just check, does everybody consent? Are they okay with us working with them? She came back and said, yes, they're happy to go. So we started a meeting with them and she happened to not be there. And they immediately said, we don't want to be part of this. We didn't give consent. And she had no idea that she couldn't see what they were actually feeling. So people in those high-level positions seem to be the toughest nut to crack with sociocracy.
Thank you so much, sir.
John,
Yeah.
John.
Oh, we're about out of time.
We're running out of time. So what I suggest is we have 3 more questions in the chat box, 2 from John and 1 from Raviji again. My suggestion is that I will write these questions to you and we could respond to them through email, just like we did with Khan's session, because we're really running out of time. I was so interested in listening, I kind of lost track of time as well. I was just a very good facilitator today. But before we close, with everybody's consent, I would like to invite Father Edwin Anna, to just say just like a closing word or a summary or his thoughts on today's session, and then we can go in for a formal vote of thanks. Sorry, John, to cut you off, but we're really short of time.
I appreciate you catching it. I'm sorry I didn't catch it 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, Edwin Anna, over to you.
Okay. Fine. So, you see, very happy to have John here addressing us. And John is known to be the one who brought sociocracy to the English-speaking world. It was all a kind of Dutch language business there. Started in Holland. And then the rest of the world, the English-speaking world, did not know what the sociocracy was. And John took it upon himself to go and stay there, learn the language, and then get everything together, and then bring out books in English. And his books are the real guidebooks to know more about sociocracy. He has been writing a lot about that. And not only he introduced the sociocracy to the English-speaking world, and he introduced sociocracy to me also. Because, see, we were just proposing this neighborocracy dream, a dream for a new world governed from below. And then we were circulating it on the internet, and 2 people wrote back to me and asked, have you heard about sociocracy? Until then, I've never heard about it. And then one of those who wrote me was John. And then we met on our phone and through internet. And then I began to learn more about sociocracy and found that what we were proposing and what they were proposing were more or less similar. Of course, it had its own extra dimensions that could add strength to our neighborocracy dream. And we are happy to include them. And then what happened eventually was that people were speaking about neighborocracy and people were speaking about sociocracy, found that we were friends, because friends means, in the Latin they used to say, "Idam velle, idam nolle." That means to the same thing. So ever since we were sociocracy people and neighborocracy people were working together. Whenever they have the sociocracy meeting, now they speak also about neighborocracy. And whenever we are promoting neighborocracy, we speak also about sociocracy. Especially what I liked there in sociocracy was the way they make decisions without allowing this majority domination. No dominations allowed in their meetings because everybody is supposed to be equal. That was a big thing for me to add to the neighborocracy dream, to introduce new ways of making decisions where nobody can dominate, and where the decision-making process need not divide people. Normally in the democratic decisions, one group is happy, the other group is despondent. And one group is jubilant, the other group is depressed. And this way, this kind of a thing goes on, dividing people every time. And here I said they are coming out the real good fire-defined tools to see that every election takes place without divisions, in such a way that everybody is happy, and every collective decision making is made again without resorting to this number game. And there's a beautiful thing, a decision where everybody is happy and everybody wins. There is no win and lose. Here, win-win situation. And then I thought this should be promoted everywhere. So wherever I go, I promote this. Now I mean, here in the church circles too, I'm trying to bring that. Say this is a new way of decision making. Why don't you go for that? So that way, we neighborocracy people and sociocracy people are going to march together, and that's a happy thing, strengthening one another. And then personally also, I am deeply grateful to you. Other than this, if I was able to do anything through UN and so on, it was mainly because of the support solidly given by John Buck. So I deeply appreciate him as a person, as a friend, and also as a great contributor, a vision giver to the whole world. So, John, more strength to you. We wish you all the best on behalf of everybody here. Thank you.
Great.
Over.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vinana, for that wonderful word. Now, for the delay, I invite Mr. Arul Sahayam, the Prime Minister of PNPI, to formally thank the gathering. Arul sir, over to you. Arul sir, please unmute yourself. Arul sir, please unmute yourself. You're muted, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much, Pritam ji, our Home Minister. It gives me immense joy to propose the vote of thanks of today's online session on sociocracy, reimagined on governance through the very author, Mr. John Buck. We are blessed to hear from the very author himself, the author of Sociocracy, Mr. John Buck. John brought sociocracy to the English-speaking world beginning in 1990. Every moment that he has tread has been a milestone in sowing the seed of sociocracy Governance Reimagined in the World Forums, urging the world personalities and leaders to promote sociocracy and in every individual practitioners to put into practice the same. Today's event has been one of those thousands of such moments. Thank you, John, for leading through the history from 1950s till today, the importance of circles. It has strengthened our hope that the world has evolving positively towards a just society through a realistic and proven method of inclusive governance called sociocracy. I extend a soul filled with the sense of gratitude for sharing your life experiences with all of us here. On behalf of every participant here, I thank you, sir, for your valuable contribution towards governance from below. I too congratulate Capacitation Ministry, the Capacitation Ministry of Provisional Democracy Parliament, India, for it is a dream come true. Headed by Jyotiraj, the Capacitation Minister of PNPI, and all the other cabinet ministers for having made this special online session come true. Thank you, respected participants from different countries who have been committed promoters and practitioners of sociocracy applied in neighborhood called a neighborocracy through neighborhood parliaments and federated in provisional multi-tiers and real multi-tiers. Your commitment as promoters, friends, associates, trainers, students, and practitioners, and members of Provisional Democracy Parliament's network movement is a clear indication that we are part of the process of establishing a new and just society. I take this opportunity to thank our patron for Edwin for his reflection and the message. Thank you very much, Swarnalakshmi, for introducing Mr. John Beck to all of us. I also thank Mr. Preetham for facilitating and note making and for all the communication that he has been doing so far since last 4 or 5 weeks. From PNPI, we wish you all the best and all the participants for the same. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Arul sir. Thank you, John, and thank you all the participants. The meeting will be open for another 5 minutes. If any of you want to drop your comments and responses in the chat box, please do so. And we will close in another 5 minutes. But please feel free to leave the meeting as well. Thank you, Arul sir, and thank you everybody. Yeah. Thank you, John. I think, John, we will have to have a follow-up session, John, because there are a lot of questions and a lot of new things that have come up from your
I think before it could close, I think it is better we take a group photo.
It's done. Oh yeah, maybe if you can switch on your cameras, then maybe we can do a screenshot. I mean, if everyone is comfortable doing so.
I would also suggest that after the meeting formally closes, those time stay back for informal interactions.
Or a chit chat.
Chit chat, yeah. To get to know one another and so on. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There you go. Yep.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah. Done. The picture is taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, so John, we will be inviting you for more such sessions to enlighten us more on sociocracy for sure. Yeah.
Really wonderful, John. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yes, I think we'll have to really read your books and really get in discussions with you more and more.
With so many new insights happening around the development, the emergence of sociocracy. It makes a lot of subtleties. A lot of things that we don't normally see, we have to be aware of to make it operate effectively.
Yeah.
And that takes discussion among not just me, but everybody, and sharing experiences. I do encourage things like the different roles, being able to get together. If you do that, a couple of times a year, they can be very productive and help build skills, for example.
Today's meeting is only an introduction. Just introducing the topic and raising questions. And then we'll have to have follow-up sessions to learn more, to go more into detail and become more and more experts. And as John says, there should be real consultants, sociocracy consultants emerging from India, from among us. So we shall commit ourselves to become more and more specialists so that we could authoritatively lead the movement.
There are various people who are kind of doing it informally. There does seem to be a benefit to formalizing that, going through the process of reviewing them and so forth. We have a performance review and before somebody gets certified, that's very helpful.
Okay.